afternoon and welcome to the pre-application conference for the Academic Quality and Early Childhood Grant. My name is Rhonda Lasco. I am the Director of the Office of Public Charter School Financing and Support. A few housekeeping issues before we get started. As you come into the webinar, you're automatically placed on mute. This is to cut down on any background noise that might occur. Just for everyone's knowledge, we will be sending out both the slide deck as well as a recording of the website at the latest tomorrow. And that will go out to everyone who is both attending the webinar, and it will also go out to all LEAs regardless of whether or not they are attending the webinar today. Since everyone is on mute, in your control panel, you will see that there is a question box. If you have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, you can go ahead and type those questions into the question box. I will be stopping periodically to answer questions, and we will also have time at the end of this presentation for questions as well. So the agenda for today, we are going to give an overview of the SOAR Act grant and the purpose of this grant. We're going to go over some of the details of the grant. We're going to go over how to submit your application and what is included in the application, and that will also include taking a walk through the application within the EGMS test site so that you guys can get a look at what it looks like. We're going to talk about how these applications will be evaluated, as well as some important dates. We will have time for questions and answers, and this slide deck will also provide you with contact information for everyone on our team. So the SOAR Act grant is part of a three-sector federal funding approach. 1/3 of the funds that are provided through the Scholarships for Opportunity and Results Act come to OSSI to provide subgrants to assist charter schools with academic quality, as well as increasing the number of high-quality seats within DC. 1/3 of it also goes to DCPS, and 1/3 of it goes to the voucher program in DC. So every year we submit an application to the Department of Ed, or every year for prior years, we were allowed to submit a 3-year application in 2018, which we submitted on November 8th. And we sought feedback, stakeholder feedback the fall prior to the submission. And the Department of Ed approved our application and gave us our grant award notification, or GAN, on May 1st of 2019. And then we were granted permission to start subgranting FFY 2019 grant funds in December of 2019. And that is what these funds are. So the overall purpose of SOAR funds is to improve and expand quality public charter schools within DC. And the objectives through funding projects are designed to increase academic achievement or academic growth for public charter school students, to support improvement and expansion of high-quality public charter schools, and to support DC families by making it easier to take advantage of school choice options. Specifically, this grant is a formula-based grant to support charter LEAs to do projects that are designed to have a direct impact on student achievement. That can be either school-wide achievement or for specific subgroups of students. So for the early childhood portion of the allocation, the funds are allocated using the Title I formula, and those are designed to assist charter LEAs with the implementation of activities that support school readiness, including development of literacy and math skills, with an emphasis on support to students that are going to increase academic achievement. and these funds should be enhancing the quality of preschool or pre-K programming. So this slide just gives you the citation of where the funding is coming from. Your allocations are listed on the OSSI website, and they were put up on the website on June 15th. They are also located within EGMS. For academic quality grants, the charter LEAs that are eligible were open and serving students during the 2018-19 school year. The eligibility does include early childhood and adult education charter LEAs, and anyone who is eligible is able to submit their project proposal for the academic quality portion of this grant. Early childhood LEAs are eligible if they were open and serving students during the 1920 school year, and they also had to meet the criteria of having 40% of 3- and 4-year-olds in pre-K programs and 40% students who met the Title I poverty threshold. So a little bit about allowability of funds. Your allowable funds have to meet the requirements of uses of federal funds. They also need to support the projects that you describe within your application, and they need to be linked to that application and shown to increase academic achievement. Things that are not allowable are anything that's not allowable under federal guidelines, things that don't align with your strategies, and this specific grant does not allow for indirect costs. I'm going to go into a little bit more about allowable, considering I know a lot of you are looking to move some of your students into the classroom in the fall or to increase distance learning. And so we've gotten a lot of questions about what things to support that would be allowable under the SOAR grant. I don't have an exhaustive list for you, but I can tell you that things such as laptops would be allowable. Finding a way to increase internet accessibility for your schools would be allowable. I do want to let you guys know that minor reparations to the school are allowable under federal guidelines as long as it is not increasing the value of the building. And so if you needed to get things like hand washing stations to make sure that students were in the building, that would be allowable. If you needed to get stickers to put on the floor to help students know where they needed to stand to increase social distancing, that would be allowable. If you needed to purchase some sort of partitions for your classrooms to make sure that the students were safe, those are also allowable costs. I have someone asking if laptops are allowable or not allowable. Laptops are allowable. Any technology would be allowable. And like I said, if you guys have individual, I obviously cannot spout off an exhaustive list of all of the things that might be allowable under this grant. But if you have any specific questions about allowable costs, you should definitely reach out to your program contact, and they will answer any specific questions about allowable costs. So we are now going to go into a little bit about the application, how to submit, and what's inside the application. The deadline for this application is going to be July 13th at 3 p.m. Any funds allocated to LEAs who elect not to apply on July 13th will be reallocated to eligible LEAs that meet that deadline. And it's really important that you guys do get your application in by 3 p.m. on July 13th as we do reallocate the funds if you do not meet that deadline. So I'm sure most of you know that we review those within a couple of weeks and then provide you with notes if it is not approvable, if there's something that you need to fix. And so if you find that this timeline is too short, you find the deadline creeping up and you do not have time to put in everything that you wanted to put in your application, I highly suggest that you submit it as best you can. And we will go back and forth with you until you are approvable, but make sure that you put something in every single section and submit it by July 13th at 3 p.m. So those applications, I'm sure most of you are familiar with EGMS. They are submitted in EGMS. These applications should be located in the drop-down year of 2020. And we do encourage that you avoid any last-minute submission issues by submitting early. Again, those applications are due on July 13th by 3 p.m. And the reason the deadline is 3 p.m. is to ensure that EGMS help desk staff are available to assist with anything you need up until the deadline. That deadline is firm to ensure equity. We do not make exceptions, so we encourage you to submit early. And again, even if you are submitting one sentence in one of your narratives, we will work back and forth with you as long as you have made that initial submission deadline. So these are the different tabs that are in the application, and we're going to go into the actual application, but I will let you know, obviously, I'm sure many of you know this application was originally supposed to be released in March, and we pulled it back to make sure that we were taking another look at the application to make sure that we were rewording things to make sure that it made sense for you guys during this time. There is a general information tab. That's just general information about the grants. It's completely informational. There's nothing for you to complete on that tab. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with the contact information tab, where you're going to put in all of the contact information for several different people within your organization. We have an information tab. This is 2 to 3 sentences in length. You are not graded on this, but it provides a high-level overview of the scope and proposed outcomes. And so you are going to say something to the effect of, let's say, this project is to provide a reading tutoring program for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. It really can be as simple as that. It should be a very high-level overview of what we can expect to see in the application. The funding distribution tab is also informational. There's nothing to complete there, as well as the allocation. And the allocation tab should show you the split of how much you were allocated for academic quality and how much you were allocated for early childhood. And so that's just there to provide you that information. The main application is going to be the meat and potatoes of your application. You're going to complete a needs assessment, describe your project, provide a theory of action, which is an if, then, because statement. You are going to answer an OSCE priority question that deals with how you're ensuring that whatever your project is also meeting the needs of special education students. And then you're going to complete a performance measure document, which we will go over when we get into the application. So you should really be making a clear link between the data that you've checked within your needs assessment and what you saw in that data and how that showed you what the need was for your school. There should be a clear link between the need that you've identified and the project that you are describing and the strategies that you're going to be using. You should be detailed but concise. Then you're going to have your detailed planning expenditures, which is your budget. There'll be a small paragraph to summarize the planned uses of funds, and then you're going to have your itemized budget. The budget summary, I'm sure you're also very familiar with this, automatically populates with the information that you put in your line item budget. There is no required supporting documentation on the supporting documentation tab for your initial submission. The reason this tab is there is that when you are awarded, this section of the application is used if you need an amendment. You would put up a letter of rationale explaining what changes you are making in your application and why you need them, but there is nothing needed for your initial submission. The assurances, you're going to read through all of those assurances and make sure that you check the box at the top and click on Save Page. And this page, the second tab there, will also need it to be saved, and that shows whether you have also submitted the central data collection common assurances. I'm sure that most of you have already done that since this is in the drop-down year 2020. But you'll know if it's not done, as you cannot create an application without checking the assurances for central data. Once again, those submissions are due by 3 p.m. on July 13th. You're going to run the consistency check and lock the application. After 3 p.m. on July 13th, the submit button does disappear. It will no longer be available. So please try to make sure that you submit early to avoid any technical issues. And then the last two tabs are application print and application history. The print button or the print tab is available if you need a hard copy of the application. EGMS generates PDFs once an hour on the hour. And then the application history shows all actions involving that application. So before we get into how these are evaluated, I am going to go ahead and go into the application within the test site. So I have a couple of questions that came up. Are there different expectations for outcomes or milestones given the potential challenges of COVID-19? That is a very good question. You are setting your own milestones within the application, and we will get into where you will be doing that. And so it is up to you to set what outcomes you expect to see. We do expect them to be academic-based milestones and outcomes, but you are the ones that write your expectations. So I have someone asking, although new schools are not eligible for SOAR funding this year, should we be completing an application to access additional flexible formula funding and CARES equivalent allocations, or is this a different application process? So we put in, thank you for that question. We put in an amendment with the Department of Ed, and in that amendment, that would be the FFY 20 application. And so that will come out as soon as we receive the approval and the next GAN for that funding. But that will include an additional round of academic quality funding, as well as CARES equivalent allocations, as well as the facilities funding, which will be a formula-based grant as well. And we are going to combine all of those into one application, but that will be the next application to come out. And we have also requested in that amendment, just so that you guys know, that rather than have that application and have this one that you're filling out now be a continuation, like brand new continuation application, as we've had to do in the past, what we will do is any funds that you have not expended at the end of this fiscal year will be added into your budget once that application is filled out. So you will only be doing an amendment to add whatever funds you have left into that budget, so that you have a simplified process where you only have the one application to keep track of. Okay, someone is asking what is the grant period for this particular grant. The grant period is going to be July 13th through this year through July 12th of 2021. However, it will roll into the other application once that application is filled out and there are carryover amounts to be added. It will work much like your Title I carryover does. And it looks like I have a couple of questions about when we expect that application to release. We are hoping that that application releases possibly in September, but please do not quote me on that because it all depends on when we get the grant award notice from the Department of Ed, and I am not positive. I am hopeful that we are going to get that next month, but I'm not positive that that is when we will get it. I have someone asking more along the lines of outcomes, if you guys will get dinged if the outcome is lower. So whatever your outcome is, we won't ding you if you don't meet your outcome. We just want, in your reporting with SOAR grants, you are reporting on where you are with meeting your outcomes. Those are your goals. As long as in your reporting, which is done every 6 months, you are explaining where you are with meeting those goals and you have a valid reason if you are not meeting those goals, then you will not receive any sort of finding or ding for not meeting specific goals that you've laid out. All right, so you are going to go to the SOAR Academic Quality and Early Childhood Grant within EGMS. And again, that is in drop-down year 2020. So for this, you would be creating an application, but of course, since I'm in the test site, this application has already been created and approved in the test site, so it looks slightly different. But I'm going to go through each of these tabs, and I also have some other information to give you as we go through this. So just like always, the general information tab is just that. There's some information if you want to read through it. It's helpful. It talks about your eligibility and how much funding we had available. So you're going to put in your contact information in the contact information tab. The project overview tab, again, this is a high-level overview, just 1 or 2 sentences describing what your project is. For funding distribution, this is informational for you. The allocations, again, are going to just show you the breakdown of your academic quality allocation versus your early childhood allocation, if you have one. And the main application is where you're probably going to be spending most of your time. And so you have, just like you have in years past, you're going to check the data sources that you use, either quantitative and or qualitative data sources. Please note that there is an other box here, and if you click that, you have the opportunity to put in other places that you may have found data. In the needs assessment section, you're going to substantiate your need for that proposed project by describing the data that you checked from the sources above. So anything that you check, you should say what you saw in that data. So if you checked park scores, what were the park scores that you were focusing on? And once you've listed out what the data was, then you can talk about what that data showed you. So that data may have showed you that you have a real need to increase achievement in mathematics scores with your ELL students, and that's why you are taking on the project that you are taking on. So you should be talking about what the data actually was and what you learned from it, so that you can demonstrate what your project is going to be. So you're going to describe the proposed project and activity. And so these activities should be research-based or based on a demonstrated success at your LEA in the past, or since these are Some of the things that you guys are going to be doing with this funding is new, and we know that you weren't able to research it because we're all trying new things right now in a brand new world. And so if that is the case, you should be basing those activities on sound logic. So perhaps it is, this, I've seen this work in person. This strategy works in person, and so we expect that this strategy should work with distance learning. Or it could be that you're doing a certain strategy to ensure that the building is safe for more students to be able to come into the building, because you've seen that students over the course of the past few months were not as engaged. And so that they will be more engaged if they are in the classroom. And so you are taking on a certain project to ensure that you can have more students in the classroom, especially if it's something that you're doing to increase the safety of the school. Your theory of action, again, this is going to be your if, then, because statement. The if, then, because statement is going to be, if we do this activity, then we expect to see these results because, and you're going to give your because that's where you're going to either cite the research or say we've seen it happen before, or say what you've observed that makes you think that this is definitely going to increase academic achievement. And then the priority question, as I said before, is just saying how you're going to ensure that your students with disabilities have access to and meaningfully participate in whatever project you are taking on with these funds. And then there is the performance measures table. So the link to the performance measures table is right here. You are going to click on that, and that is going to bring you to the OSSI website, where you will find the template for the performance measures document. I'm going to click on that and open it so that you guys can see what this is. So it's very important that you guys fill this out. This is going to be where your performance agreement comes from. So most of you who have had a grant through SOAR before know that we create performance agreements, and those performance agreements are what we base any sort of monitoring on. So if we come and monitor your program, it's going to be based on the activities that you describe in this document that we use to do the performance agreement. And so what you're going to do, if you have an academic quality allocation, you're going to fill out academic quality. If you have early childhood, you're going to fill out early childhood. They are the exact same table, only one is for academic quality and one is for early childhood. If you have both, you will fill out both. So you are going to, that 1 to 2 sentence project summary, you can copy and paste that right here as well. You're going to put the objective of your grant, of your overall objective for the grant, which should be a SMART objective. And then you are going to list out 3 to 5 activities that you plan to complete that deal with your project for each reporting period. And the reporting period is 6 months of the award. So for the first 6 months and the second 6 months, you're going to give an estimated completion date of that activity. So if you say, we're going to have 3 professional developments within the 6-month period on technology for teachers. So you would put the completion date of approximately when do you think the last PD should be taking place. Now, that does not need to be a specific date. It can be the month of January, or it could be the winter of 2020. So it just needs to be an estimation of when you think the specific activity that you're listing will be done. The evidence of completion is also a really important part for you to pay attention to, because this is you telling us what you think you are going to keep on file to show that activity was done. So if you had those 3 professional developments that you were going to do by January of 2021, it might be an agenda that you are keeping, a calendar. It could be either sign-in sheets, or if you are doing online professional development at this point, it could be that you have an attendance log from whatever platform you're using. So you are going to list out some of the things that you would have on file that would show us that that was done. And those are the types of items, or those are the things that we are going to look for to see that you kept if we do come monitor. So you are going to fill that out, and then you are going to upload it to your grant application. And then you are going to look at the detailed planning expenditures. Now, this is very important. You're going to have your brief summary of your detailed planning expenditures. Now, the line-by-line items, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this, but I'll go over it quickly. We have salaries and benefits. Those are any people that are on your payroll. Professional services are going to be anything you have a contract for. And so you actually should have a contract for something if it is listed on professional services. If you do not have a contract, if it is something like a registration fee for something, it would go under other objects. Equipment is anything that is $5,000 or more per unit. We don't usually see a whole lot of things that are listed under equipment except for the actual facilities grants that we have. Most things that you are purchasing for your building are not technically equipment according to the federal guidelines. Anything that is below $5,000 per unit will be placed under supplies and materials. So if you are purchasing those laptops or tablets or iPhones, that is going to be placed under supplies and materials. And then anything that does not fit under salaries, contracts, equipment, supplies is going to go under other. Another quick thing as we look here, you have the different program categories that are here. These are instruction, that's anything that deals with direct instruction to students. Support services are things that are supporting instruction to students. So those would be things like professional development for the teachers, or professional development for your leaders. Administration is actual administration of the grant. So if you are paying a portion of your finance person's salary and they're the person that's turning in all the reimbursements, that would be under administration. Operations and maintenance is going to be things that are about operating or maintaining the building. So in this case, we may actually see some of that this year. Even in the academic quality grant, if you are purchasing that PPE, or if you are purchasing the stickers for the floor or anything to make the building safer, that's going to be under operations and maintenance. Student transportation is exactly what that is, exactly what it says it is. And then travel would be travel for your staff, not for the students. One other really important thing that you guys should know is that we are allowing for pre-award costs, but all the way back to June 1st. So if you have already purchased something that's an allowable cost that aligns with your project, but you purchased it June 2nd, we will allow for it, but we need you in the expenditure description to say specifically that it is a pre-award cost. And the reason that we need you to say specifically in there is that although the Uniform Grant Guidance does allow for pre-award costs, they have to be prior approved by the state education agency for you to claim them. And so that's how we are showing that they are prior approved, is that you are putting it directly into that description. This is a pre-award cost. And as long as you put that in there, we will allow costs going all the way back to June 1st. And so I have someone asking if tape or signs for the floor to maintain 6 feet would be under operations or supplies. So that could be, if I would put that under operations. I would put that under operations. Supplies are going to be things like the paper and the pencils and the books. Operations and maintenance, I would say, because these are new things that you're not normally purchasing, I would say that they're going to be operations because you're buying those things to make sure that your building is operational. Okay. And then your budget summary is going to pre-populate and show you everything that you have put in your line item. So we do have a tab for award administration that talks about audits, monitoring and reporting, confidentiality, non-discrimination in the delivery of services, appearance of a conflict of interest, and terms and conditions. So that is also informational. Supporting documentation, as I said before, there's nothing for you to upload in your initial submission. This is where you will upload a letter of rationale if you need an amendment once the application has gone through. Assurances, you are going to read through these and check the box that you agree. There will be a save page button at the bottom. That's not there now because this application has already been approved within this system. And then the assurances agreement summary is you're going to save this page as well, and that will update this date saying that you were fully agreeing to both central data assurances and the program specific assurances. The submit button is where the submit tab is where you're going to go in order to submit the application. Obviously, there's no submit button here because it's already approved in this system, but you would run your consistency check, lock the application, and there will be a submit button for you to submit. This is where you're going to be able to see all of the history of your application, when it was submitted, and then this is the application print button or tab. And you would be able to click here and you can actually choose if you only want to submit or print one tab, you could unclick what you do not want to be in the PDF. And then you would go ahead and click request print. Again, that will generate a PDF. You would have to come back at the beginning of the next hour, and there will be a PDF available for you to download. So we're going to go back in for the evaluation, how we evaluate these applications. So I have someone asking if LEA should expect to receive an additional allocation of SOAR academic quality funding when the second round is released. Again, this is the FFY19 funding. It was delayed. We still have FFY20 funding that will be coming out, but as I said, we are waiting on both the approval of the amendment as well as the grant award notification. Part of that amendment was that when we submitted the 3-year application for 18, 19, and 20 funding, we had an assumption that we would only be receiving $15 million per year. And so we actually had to do an amendment for the 19 funding because the federal government allocated us $17.5 million. So we had to account for that extra $2.5 million. And the same thing happened with our 20 funding, but then we had additional things that we were amending when we submitted that to the Department of Ed. And so we do need that additional GAN showing the full amount of funding that we are receiving in order for us to move on those applications, as well as the approval from them to make the changes that we have requested, which include having the facilities grant be a formula grant and combining it with academic quality into one application, as well as that CARES equivalent funding, and that would all be in one application. But you would LEA should expect to receive the additional allocation of academic quality. The request that we put in is not going to change the allocations that you're getting for FFY19 funding. This is 19 funding that you're receiving right now. These allocations, the only way they would change at this point in the application that you're going to be filling out now, the only way that those allocations would change would be if people choose not to apply for this funding, then it would be reallocated. And then I have someone asking, does this mean that some schools will get more funding through FY20 funding? Yes. All schools that are eligible will get an additional amount of SOAR funding for FY20, our FY20 funding. And that should be released in the fall. And more information will come out about that when we are releasing that. And then I have a question about, is there going to be FFY19 SOAR facilities funding, or should we expect the next round to be released with the FY20 application? After having a stakeholder feedback session, part of what we asked in our amendment to the Department of Ed was that the 19 and 20 allocation amounts that we had put for SOAR facilities funding, those are going to be combined, and they are going to be a formula-based funding that is going to come out with the academic quality. And so it will all be one application. So there will not be a competitive facilities grant. It will be a formula grant, and they'll all be in one application. The next application. Right now we're focused on the 19 application. That's what we're looking at right now, the 19 academic quality application. When the 21 does come out, and it should be in the fall, and that's dependent on when we get the grant award notification with the 20 funding from the Department of Ed, there will be an additional application that comes out that will include SOAR academic quality and early childhood from 20 funding. That will include 19 and 20 facilities funding in a formula-based grant, and it will include the SOAR or the CARES Act equivalent funding from our amendment. So this grant obviously is awarded via formula funding. We have an internal review panel that assesses the quality of each application and looks at it according to a rubric. And upon completion of the review, we either approve the application or we send it back to you and let you know that you have some revisions to make. So we are looking to make sure that all the things that we talked about are there, that there is a clear link between your data and your need and your project, that the project is well described, that we can, understand what you are doing, that you are doing something that is allowable under federal regulations, and that it meets the purpose of the grant. So we will either send that back for some revisions and we will go back and forth with you until it is approved, or we will approve it right away. The application, again, that's going to be due July 13th by 3 p.m. We expect to have all of our initial reviews of all of the submitted applications done by July 27th. And your grant award period is going to be from July 13th, 2020 through July 12th, 2021. So I'm going to have time for questions and answers right now. And while I am answering any questions that come up, I am putting up the contact information for everybody that is in the Office of Public Charter School Financing and Support. Any one of us is able to answer any questions that you may have about the application, about allowability. And if you have any questions about EGMS, or if you're having an error come up, or you're having trouble uploading something, or something that has to do with a technical issue with your application, then we encourage you to reach out to the EGMS help desk. Okay. So someone's asked if the CARES money is separate from the title CARES money. Correct. Correct. What we did is we heard you. We heard feedback from LEAs that and we are trying to make it equitable. So the CARES funding from the federal government was based on title eligibility, and so that left out some of our early childhood LEAs and it left out some of our adult LEAs. and a few of the other LEAs. So what we've done is in our amendment to the Department of Ed for the next application, we asked for some of the SOAR money to be set aside to give an equivalent allocation for the people who are not eligible for regular CARES funding. So we will be issuing allocations to the folks that did not get a CARES Act allocation. And then the end of year SOAR report be due this year. I'm not sure if you're asking about this particular grant or if you're talking about the grant, the 2018 funds. If our FFY 18 SOAR academic quality covers salaries and we wish to have the 19 cover salaries as well, should we just explain that and then start our salaries after the SOAR academic quality grant is over? Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. You can say that the salaries will begin as soon as they are over. Definitely, if it's the same salary, then yeah, you can't pay them twice. So you would start them when your 18 grant period is over. So the question about the SOAR reports being due this year was for the 2018 SOAR reports. So that's a little bit of a trickier question. So the 2018 grant, we did offer a 1-year no-cost extension for that grant, and some people took advantage of it, and some people did not, or have not yet so far. And so the final report for 2018 is due 1 month after your grant period ends. And so I believe the grant period ends August. I'm going to get this wrong because I don't have it up, because all I have up is the webinar. But I think it's August 16th. I think, which would mean that the final report would be due September 16th. If you are confused about when it is, then you can go and take a look in your performance agreement, because the exact dates are listed in your performance agreement. If you did request that no-cost extension, your program contact is going to, will either already has or will be reaching out to you to amend your performance agreement to include 2 more 6-month periods. And it will also include additional reporting dates, as we do have you report every 6 months. So I am still on the line. And I will stay on the line for a few more minutes to answer any questions that you guys might have. If you find that you have a question later that you need an answer to, you can reach out to any of the people listed as a program contact here, and we can answer any questions that you have. I do have one question. Can the same staff be on the FFY 18 and FFY 19 grants? Yes, they can. You can have the same staff from 1 year to the next. You just need to make sure that you are not paying, if you're paying 100% of their salary, that you're not requesting reimbursement for both at the same time period. So since this grant is going to begin July 13th and the other grant ends in August, you would need to be careful that you're not requesting reimbursement over that overlapping time period for the full salary. Is it too late to request an extension waiver for the last grant? It is not too late. The template is located on the OSCE website, and you would just be submitting that to me. Yeah, you can fill it out and submit it to me, and it's a 1-year no-cost extension. I have someone asking if a copy of the presentation will be emailed. Yes, we are going to send out the slide deck as well as a recording to not only everybody that was on the presentation, but we will be sending it to anybody who is listed as the head of school or a fiscal contact in eSchool Plus. So again, I am remaining on the line for a little bit. And again, the presentation itself is over, but I will remain on the line to answer any more questions that come in, at least for a few more minutes. And I hope you guys are all staying safe and healthy. I look forward to reading your applications. Please reach out to me if you find that you have a question later, or reach out to me now and ask me a question now. So I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, so I am going to end the webinar for everyone. Again, thank you for coming and listening to me talk for an hour. I am very excited to read your applications, and do not hesitate to reach out to myself or anyone else on the team if you have any questions.